That melody that you just listened to was inspired by John Mayer and Jimi Hendrix and how they embellish bluesy phrases between their chord progressions. So in this lesson, I'm not only going to be showing you how to play that, I'm also going to be sharing with you my thought process on how I made that and how you can also take the same principles and apply it in your own playing. Before we get cracking, I strongly recommend that you're relatively knowledgeable on your triad and inversion knowledge across the neck, because not only will it make it easier for you to follow along, but it'll also give you a greater understanding of the principles that I go through in this lesson. If you're not so familiar with this knowledge, then I recommend you check out my practical guitar theory course, which is linked in the description below. Now with that aside, let's get cracking. So here's the basic chord progression that I used in this video. Now they're all very simple bar chords, of course, but they're not played like traditional bar chords. They're played with the thumb wrapped over the top. And that's very important because that frees up our fingers a lot more to do those embellishes between the chords. So the first chord in embellishment sounds like this. So it's all based around that little box shape there and all the triads involved in that bar chord shape. So if I play it slow for you. So we have two quick hammer-on pull-off phrases in the middle there, so that's on the G and B strings. So you see I bar the G and B and hammer on to the G there, pull off, and then the same phrase on the strings above. Moving on to the next chord, sounds like this. So I've kind of changed that chord a bit from your typical G major there, and I'll flatten the third degree to a second, so we have this chord. Now let me play it with the embellishment real slow. Notice the direction that I pick there. This is very important, so pay attention to this hand now. You must finish on an up because that sets you up for the next chord, which starts on a down. And that next chord is a D, sounds like this. Now this shape is strongly linked to triad knowledge because the first inversion of a D major triad is here. And that's very convenient for this shape because we can kind of slide into that very easily and use that to our advantage for the chord embellishments. So if I play this phrase slow, so as you can see, I'm going from the root chord to the first inversion, and then I finish on an open E string, which is a great note to finish on because that walks perfectly into the next chord, which is G flat minor. And for this chord, I play something very similar to what I did for the first chord. It sounds like this. So if I play that slowly. And then we go into our G. And for this chord, I play this phrase. So that there, again, I'm just sort of walking up a few triad shapes. So we go from our root position. And then I go to the first inversion. So we've gone from, and then I follow that up to the G major up here. So I've gone from here to here to here, and then I finish off with a hammer-on pull-off here, which is based around this inversion. Now if I play that phrase really slow for you, hopefully you can see how I link all those triads together. And a little bit faster. And that sets us up nicely for the next chord, which is a D. But rather than go to that D there, I actually choose the D here and just play the root position triad here. Since my first finger's there, it kind of makes sense just to put the little down and we're already there for the D chord rather than changing from there to there. It's a sort of big movement, a big unnecessary movement. And again, I'm just playing around with some of the inversions around there. So we have the root position and the first inversion directly below it on the next string set. And I'm just playing around with some hammer-ons and pull-offs derived from the major scale in D to create something that sounds a little bit like this. If I play that slow for you. And that leads us on to our G again, and I don't really do too much at this point. I just added the little finger on the 5th fret of the E string and played a phrase similar to this. So if I play that slowly, and that sets us up for our next chord, which is A, and in this chord I play with 6s a lot. So let me play it slow and then I'll explain what I mean by that. So the ascending melody at the bottom there is based in 6ths, so these notes are a 6th apart. And then I finish on the root. Now when you play those notes, it's important that you mute the B string in the middle because that one kind of gets in the way, so use either of the fingers around it to just touch that string so that you're muting it. Once again, if I play that phrase really slow for you, it should sound a bit like this. And that leads us back into our root chord. So hopefully you could see throughout that explanation how I used the root position chords with their triads and inversions to create some cool embellishments. Now you'll often find that some of these licks you can use in any major position or minor position. So what I mean by that, for example, this D shape. These two triads, these major triads, are always going to be next to each other. You have the root position and the first inversion. And that works in your favor because you can use these triads to your advantage. So for example, so I played 3 major chords there on the A string, and I could do the same thing for each chord and it sounds awesome. Same principle applies on the E string. You're always going to have the root position and the first inversion in the same place every time, so you can go between this chord and then you can do the same thing in every major position. And the same thing applies to minor, of course, so the 2 minor shapes that I used in this whole progression, I pretty much did the same thing. So now you're able to take any of the embellishments that I played throughout this video and apply them to any major or minor chord progression that you play. So let me play the whole progression that I played at the beginning of this video, really slow for you to follow along to now. So that wraps it up. Hopefully you managed to follow along and take something away from this lesson. If you have any questions or comments, then make sure you drop them in the comments section below. Make sure you like and subscribe if you're new to this channel. And if you want to support more content like this, then make sure you check out my Patreon page where you can support more lessons like this and find the tab for this lesson. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.